What would you do if a wild animal you once saved returned years later? Let us know below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more emotional wildlife stories. The snowstorm raged like a wild spirit over the icy ridgelines of the Khamari Highlands, burying every trace of life beneath its furious breath. Ranger Cole Maddox, a seasoned wildlife officer hardened by years of solitude and survival, trudged through waist-deep drifts on his late patrol. The wind screamed around him, but something tugged at his senses, a subtle shift in the landscape. Then, just beyond a knotted grove of pines, he saw it. A dark, slumped figure half buried in the snow. Cole's first thought was that it was a log or a carcass. But as he stepped closer, the truth froze him in place. It was a black panther. A creature not seen in these highlands in decades, if ever. Its sleek coat was frosted over, its powerful body curled in on itself, trembling with the last flickers of life. Blood stained the snow beneath a wounded paw. And its breath? Barely there. Cole knew protocol. Injured apex predators were to be left for nature to decide. But staring into those dim, pain-glazed golden eyes, he couldn't walk away. He dropped to his knees, unzipping his coat. "Not today," he whispered. Cradling the near-lifeless panther in his arms, Cole began the long, punishing trek back to his outpost, the storm biting at every step. He didn't know what would happen next, but deep down, something told him this was no ordinary rescue. This was destiny, and it had black fur, sharp claws, and a soul worth saving. The panther lay unmoving on a thick blanket by the iron stove, its breath shallow, body curled like a dying flame. Ranger Cole Maddox knelt beside it, his cabin still trembling from the storm outside. He worked in silence, stripping off his soaked gloves and gently rubbing warmth into the panther's limbs. Every minute counted. Every touch was a gamble between trust and terror. He melted snow over the fire, coaxing a few drops of warm water past the animal's cracked lips. The panther flinched, but drank. As the hours passed, life stirred. Cole never left its side, monitoring the rise and fall of its chest, wiping the blood from its paw, whispering things even he didn't fully understand. He hadn't spoken aloud in days, but now his voice was constant, a bridge to something primal and wordless between them. By dawn, the panther blinked, just once. Golden eyes met his, haunted, wary, and ancient. Cole's heart pounded. "You're still in there," he muttered. "Still fighting." He rose and opened his weather-worn journal. Under the flickering firelight, he wrote one word at the top of the page: Ember. Days bled into nights. Ember stirred more each hour, testing her muscles, crawling closer to the fire, always watching Cole. The fierce predator was still there, buried beneath pain, but something else too. Curiosity, memory. Cole knew the danger, knew the risk, but something deeper had taken root in the silence between them, a fragile thread of trust, forged in fire and storm. Weeks passed, and the snow outside Cole's cabin began to soften under the touch of early spring. Ember, the name now etched into every corner of Cole's journal, had grown stronger, her movements steadier, her gaze sharper. No longer the trembling shadow of death he'd rescued. She now paced the cabin like a queen in exile. But Cole knew this life couldn't be hers forever. One crisp morning, he unlatched the cabin door. Ember froze, sniffed the cold air, and stepped outside. The forest was quiet, but alive. Cole watched as her powerful shoulders rippled under her dark coat, her paws sinking into the snow, her tail flicked, ears twitched. Every sound, every breeze became a new lesson. When a rabbit darted past, she didn't chase, but her muscles tensed like coiled wire. Instinct was returning, Each day, they ventured deeper. Cole guided her gently, pointing out edible roots, tracing claw marks on tree trunks, warning her of thin ice near the creek. Ember watched everything, listened, learned. At night, she returned willingly to the cabin, curling near the fire as if the wilderness hadn't yet claimed her. But Cole saw the signs, her growing independence, her sharpening focus. She wasn't just surviving, she was remembering who she was. And Cole, he felt it too, a tension building, a countdown ticking. He had taught her to live again, but now he faced the truth he had been dreading. The time would come when she would leave. And this time, she might not look back. The morning air in the Khamari Highlands was thick with dew and silence, the forest a cathedral of green where sunlight poured through like stained glass. Ranger Cole Maddox stood beside his battered jeep, heart heavy, hands trembling as he unlatched the reinforced transport crate. Inside, Ember shifted, calm, alert, and impossibly regal. Months had passed since he'd carried her from the brink of death. Now she was whole again, and ready to leave. The valley he had chosen stretched wide, a haven untouched by roads or hunters, bordered by cliffs and fed by a winding river. Cole had scouted it carefully. Abundant prey, dense cover, safety. But none of that eased the lump in his throat. The crate door creaked open. Ember didn't bolt. She stepped out slowly, her paws silent against the mossy ground. She sniffed the air, muscles tensing, golden eyes scanning the world she once ruled. Cole crouched nearby, whispering, "This is your place now. No cages, no fire, just freedom." For a long, breathless moment, Ember lingered. Their eyes met, wild and human, predator and protector, bound by something deeper than instinct. Then, with a flick of her tail, she turned and padded into the trees. Each step vanished her further into shadow until only silence remained. Cole stood frozen, fists clenched, breath shaking. He'd done what was right, but it still hurt like hell. He whispered after her, "Stay wild, Ember." And the forest, as if holding its breath, whispered nothing back. 5 years had slipped through the fingers of time like mountain snowmelt. Ranger Cole Maddox, older now, more lined and quiet, still walked the ridges of the Khamari Highlands, though his pace had slowed and his solitude deepened. He hadn't spoken Ember's name aloud in years, but he thought of her often. He never searched, never called. But his eyes always wandered to the tree line, to the places where silence grew thick and shadows shifted like ghosts. Then, one dawn, a call came through his ranger radio. "Strange sighting near the ravine trail," the young voice said. "A black panther, calm, like it's waiting for something." Cole's heart skipped. By the time he arrived, hikers had gathered near the clearing, whispers tight in the air. He stepped out of his truck and froze. There, poised just beyond the tree line, stood Ember. She was no longer the wounded creature he had cradled in the storm. She was magnificent, sleek, strong and wild, yet something in her stillness, in the tilt of her head, spoke of memory. Their eyes locked. The world fell away. Cole took a step forward. Ember did not move. Then, like mist shifting in moonlight, she approached. Not with fear, not with threat, but with purpose. She paused inches away, golden eyes searching his face. And then she did something no one would ever believe. She lowered her head. Cole reached out. His hand brushed her fur, warm and real. "You remember," he whispered. And in that moment, so did the forest. The video swept across the internet like wildfire. In it, a full-grown black panther, silent, majestic, lethal, emerged from the forest shadows and approached a man with calm purpose. Ranger Cole Maddox stood still, hand outstretched, as the beast, known in whispers as Ember, the phantom of the Khamari Highlands, bowed her head and brushed against him like a house cat greeting an old friend. The world gasped. News anchors stumbled through disbelief. Wildlife experts launched into debates, citing science, instinct, and behavioral anomalies. But no explanation could quite capture what the world had just witnessed. A wild panther had remembered love. Cameras flocked to the highlands. Journalists called Cole a legend. Documentarians offered deals. But Cole, he stayed quiet, declined the noise. His voice, when offered, focused only on one message: respect the wild, protect it, and never underestimate the power of kindness. Back at his outpost, Cole sat in silence by the fire, journal in hand. He flipped back to that first entry. Ember, the name that began it all. He remembered her lifeless body in the snow, the trembling breaths, the days of fear and hope. And now, this. A miracle, yes, but more than that, a reminder that sometimes the wilderness doesn't forget, and neither do the ones we save. Cole closed the book, eyes on the dark tree line outside. Somewhere out there, she moved like a shadow, untouchable to most, except him. Their story didn't need headlines. It lived in the hush of the forest, and in the heart of the man she never forgot. Years had passed, but the Khamari Highlands remained as wild and unforgiving as ever. Ranger Cole Maddox, now older and slower, still walked his patrols with the same silent reverence. The legend of Ember, the black panther he'd rescued from a snowstorm and raised from the edge of death, had become whispered lore in conservation circles. But Ember herself had not been seen in seasons. The world moved on. But Cole? He remembered. It was late autumn when it happened. A chill wind swept the ridgeline, rattling golden leaves like distant whispers. Cole stood beneath a weathered pine, gazing out over the valley where he had once released Ember. He was about to turn back when the silence shifted. Not with sound, but with presence. Across the clearing, half veiled by mist, stood a shadow, sleek, still, watching. A black panther. She didn't move, neither did he. Cole's breath hitched, his hand tightening on the walking stick he now carried. Time seemed to fold. The snowstorm, the firelight, the name he had written in a weathered journal, Ember. She took one step forward, not to approach, but to be seen. Cole felt his eyes sting. He didn't call out, didn't move to follow. Instead, he slowly tipped his weathered hat, the gesture soft, sacred. The panther blinked, then melted into the forest shadows. Cole stood alone again, but not empty, because in that brief, wordless moment, he knew. She remembered. And in the wild heart of the Highlands, their story would never truly end. Sometimes, the most powerful connections are born in silence, in the spaces between survival and trust, fear and compassion. Cole Maddox didn't set out to be a hero. He followed his heart when protocol told him to walk away. And Ember, a creature of instinct and wilderness, responded not with fury, but with fragile belief. Their bond reminds us that kindness isn't weakness, and that even the fiercest souls, human or beast, remember those who offered mercy when it mattered most. In a world often hardened by fear and rules, it's the quiet acts of empathy that leave the deepest marks. You never know what your kindness might ignite, or who might remember it years down the line. If this story touched your heart, reminded you of life's quiet miracles, or simply gave you hope, please don't forget to like the video, share it with someone you love, and subscribe for more stories like this.